Welcome everyone to this very interesting panel of the European Vegan Summit. How is it made the backstage of vegan production? With this conversation, we hope to gain insights into the production processes behind vegan products, including innovation, manufacturing techniques, and quality control. My name is Rafael Pinto. I'm a policy manager at the European Vegetarian Union, and I will be your host for this panel. Before presenting our guests, I would like to thank the Danish Vegetarian Society for being partners of the session. They're also a member of the European Vegetarian Union and have played a key role in the development of the now famous Danish Action Plan and Grant for Plant-Based Foods, something that we might discuss a little bit later. Without further ado, let's present our incredible set of speakers, starting with Staniek, CEO of Planeat, plant-based alternatives to meat and fish. Andy is a culinary practitioner experienced in running food service businesses. Then we have Ronja Berthold, Senior Public Affairs Manager at Oatly, responsible for the DACH region and Poland. Christie, Lagally, with a background in the aerospace industry, is now the founder and CEO of Rebellyous Foods, a food production technology company working to make plant-based meat more affordable and price competitive with animal-based meat. And then Czubak, a graduate of neurocognitive science. She is also a founder of one of the first chicken meat alternatives on the Polish market, produced from Polish beans under the Apollo Roślinny Qurczak, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, brand. She's also one of the founders of the first organization in the country approaching a systematic change of the food production system. Andy, I will start with you. Welcome to this incredible panel. Tell us about your vegan business to start with. Why did you start this business? And what is the vision for the company?
Sure. So we started Planeat, I think it was 2021, but we started developing in 2020 when we seen the development of plant-based meat alternatives in the whole in Europe, in Poland, and also around the world. And then we had our own vegan restaurant in Poznań, and we started seeing the trend. So we want to develop a new kind of meat alternative that could bring different generations together in one place, in one table, to share the experience that we have with food, because food not only gives to us the nutrition that we need for living, but also brings us a culture together at one table. And this was our goal with our products, to be the key between the old generation and the new generation of food on your table. And for the future of Planeat, we see whole new kinds of meat and fish, also alternatives. Now we have, I believe, around 25 products that we developed and have on the market. So it's going really well in this kinds of different kinds of meat that we can bring to the people now in Poland and hopefully in the future around the world.
Ronja, I will now pass it over to you. Oatly is a well-established and well-recognized company, so maybe focus a little bit more on the future vision of the company and what you'd like to achieve. Ronja, can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry. I had some trouble.
No problem.
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to this panel. Yeah, really excited to be here, and hello to the other panelists as well. And I'm excited to give the Oatly perspective today. And yeah, I mean, you said it's a well established brand, and we, Andy talked a little bit about meat alternatives, and we're kind of a little bit on the other spectrum of that, plant-based dairy alternatives. I do want to come back though, because I think this is really not so well known, and really interesting about Oatly is that the idea behind it is actually based on lactose intolerance research. So back in the 80s, there were a couple of scientists that looked into lactose intolerance, which affects quite a number of people around the world, actually. And they wanted to find an alternative food that, would not just be any kind of liquid, but an actual food that could be an amazing replacement for cow's milk for these people. And so it should be allergen-free, taste great, of course, because people want to eat tasty foods. Be usable in the kitchen for baking and cooking. Could be used to make other dairy products as well, such as yogurt or ice cream, and contains a good balance of nutrients. And on top of all of that, it was also supposed to be from a crop that can be grown sustainably. So, and they looked at a couple of things, legumes and grains, but none of those really checked all the boxes as well as oats did. And that's kind of, why Oatly specializes on oats. And this is how it developed. And we're looking to, grow and drive the plant-based movement forwards with what we do, because we not just want to, sell these amazing oat products, but we also want to contribute to the shift towards a more sustainable food system. So that, looking at the future.
All right, we'll get a little bit more into the production processes of Oatly a little bit later. But Christie, having a background in the aerospace industry and being the CEO of Rebellyous Food, is the vision of your company to establish a Rebellyous colony in Mars, or are you just trying to save the planet Earth?
Yeah, well, we're just trying to save the planet Earth and obviously save our chicken friends as well. The goal of Rebellyous Foods is to make plant-based chicken available and affordable for everyone. And the way that we do that is we are tackling the price parity and quality parity problem of making a massive amount of plant-based chicken replacements with plant-based chicken replacements. So I started the company to develop the food processing equipment that was necessary in order to bring the costs down for making plant-based chicken so that we could provide a much larger market. So as many of you probably already know, globally, we produce over 771 billion pounds of animal meat. Roughly more than half of that is actually chicken. And by comparison, we only produce as a collective community about 0.2%, less than 1/5 of 1% of that volume is plant-based meat. So the goal of Rebellyous Foods is to make plant-based meat faster, better, and cheaper, and to fundamentally provide a path forward to convert meat processing facilities into plant-based meat production facilities. And because we know we can't just do that in a theoretical way, we have to develop the equipment, and then we also have to have a product. We produce a small number of SKUs to hyper-focus on those processed chicken products that are most ubiquitous. So chicken nuggets, tenders, and patties. We currently serve about 4 million kids in the United States nationwide, as well as hospitals, universities, prisons, and corporate cafeterias with our products. But the whole goal is, of course, to meet or beat price parity with animal meat so that people don't have to make a decision on whether or not the quality and the price are there to decide to eat plant-based instead of chicken. So that's our goal at Rebellyous.
And currently, what are the main hurdles making it impeding this price parity?
Yeah, so up until recently, because we've recently actually hit price parity, it was really about automating the production of plant-based meat. So, as many of you already know, we produce chicken globally. We produce most meat, and particularly chicken, in not only just factory farming of animals, which is the way we raise them, but also we have an automated system. We have automated systems to slaughter and deconstruct animals, but nothing quite like that existed on this scale for plant-based meat. And so the goal of our company, when I started it almost 7 years ago to the day, was to actually develop that automated industrialized equipment to make plant-based meat at an industrial scale at price parity. And by taking out the labor, by automating it and bringing it to such a high scale, in fact, we produce at upwards of between 3,000 and 5,000 pounds an hour at the moment, we can actually hit price parity with animal meat. But it's not just about scale. It's about automating and making continuous the production that was once actually just, or is for most other companies, a batch process. So we hyper focus on high volume products like chicken nuggets, tenders, and patties. And then we use that automated equipment to just make those products so that, you know, if you're a school food director or a corporate cafeteria director, you can choose that instead of animal meat, and it's a no-brainer.
We'll come back to how the European industry can contribute to the development of the plant-based sphere. But now, Iga, as a graduate from neurocognitive sciences, what was the thought process behind starting a chicken meat alternative company, and why? What's the ultimate goal here?
What actually started as just having a degree in neuroscience, and then I actually went into food. Now I found like a space that needs to be kind of accustomed, which is a neuroscientific approach to behaviors of customers, so you can more understand what drives them. And this is my specialty. Of course, apart from having started the business of plant-based chicken, I focus mainly on customers, how to approach them, how to hack them. You know, some neuro hacking sometimes helps. So I see it as the food production system creates the food market, and the food market actually creates the habits of customers and consumers. And going this way, you can kind of shape the behaviors of people, and not only as an individual, but as a group. So when you understand the processes, like neural processes that drives us, it's kind of easier to go into the business side of what I did, and, you know, translating into producing what actually Christie covered very nicely. I don't know what I can add after this answer, because we are like, I think our missions and visions are very similar. We are just on different continents, and I started 2 years after you in 2019. And it all started with, you know, I came up with the technology because I stopped eating meat and there was like not enough options on the market, and everything was kind of boring, you know, having some carrots and hummus on the way somewhere, and this is the only option. So I started approaching food in a scientific way as well. I kind of did like a small degree personally in different proteins and the processes, how you can shape them, how you can transform them, how you can use them. And then I adjusted this to our market, Polish market, or Eastern European market. So I focused on beans, and just like Oatly with oats, that's a tough selection. You have to pick something, but we'll probably get to different protein sources later on, but I focused on beans, which are we simply buy beans. We're like farmers, so I think that sums up the idea behind the business and behind what I do.
Thank you, Iga. Taking that part on consumer behavior and the need for technologies, Andy, to what extent are your products the result of market analysis, consumer demand, and to what extent are they just a product of your imagination and raw innovation? And also, most importantly, because this is a panel on how it's made, Did you have to create new technologies, or could you take things that were available from other processes and implement them in your company?
So I think 90% is pure imagination. Like you have to imagine what you want to be the result, what you are in the kind of developing of new products, because those kinds of products that we all here produce in some way, it wasn't even a thing a few years ago, and now you can see on the shelves in your supermarket products like plant-based meats and stuff like that you could only imagine a few years ago. So every innovation has to come from your mind, from your brain, just to see what you can do. So this is the part, but you have to see also the realistic. So you have to see what's the market. What market are you aiming to make the best product that you can in this kind of terms. I think I don't know what to add to this, because seeing in different ways. So every country also likes a little different like spices, something like this. You have to add it to the top of your product to match perfect the market with the product that you have. And this kind of terms you have to see.
Yeah, and coming from the restaurant business, obviously dealing in a very direct way with consumers and with food, how did that shape the way that you now approach the creation of flavors and new products?
This is a perfect example, because when we had our vegan restaurant, our first testers were our customers. They were telling us what is wrong, what is good, in which way should we go. And we still making it in this kind of terms. So first we think, what can we do? What's the market? If our product that we want to develop match the market and the people needs, and then we just ship to our best customers products to really to see what's the if it's perfect for them, because it has to be just perfect. And we would like from everyone have the best feedback that we can, just to improve the products that we develop.
Yeah, taking that product development experience, Ronja, you explain how Oatly came to be and how oats were the crop chosen. Was this did this also include a part of consumer analysis and consumer acceptance? How did consumers react to having milk from oats, or an alternative from oats? And how did the supply chain react? Was it ready for this amount of production and use of oats as a crop?
So yeah, the oat drinks and oat-based products Oatly is making today are very much the outcome of an original process that, you know, in the end even took decades to perfect and to arrive at where it is now. As I said, you know, it was born kind of out of a science as a university project. But now we have 30 years of experience when it comes to creating the best oat-based products on the market. And yeah, we're proud to say, you know, it was the first oat drink in the world. But yeah, the market was absolutely ready for it. And I think people could really see the advantages, you know, of combining healthy and nutritious food within a healthy and nutritious diet, and at the same time not recklessly tax the planet when making these kind of products. And then that is something that, you know, consumers are of course looking for, because they care about the environment, they care about climate issues. And so, yeah.
And how compared to the traditional milk products that Oatly is now trying to make a thing of the past, how does the production process compare? Did you have to invent new technologies? Are you using some of the same machinery? Can we convert an industrial traditional milk plant to an Oatly plant?
The Oatly production process is in some aspects very different, and in others actually not that much. So, you know, we always say we seek to leave out the middle cow. You know, we provide nutritious and sustainable dairy alternatives. So obviously we work with very different raw materials, right? It's oats and not cows. But ultimately we have an agricultural product, you know, that is turned into a safe to eat and drink and nutritious food for people that they can conveniently buy in the supermarket. And for that, we first take oats, of course, then they're milled together with water. Afterwards, natural enzymes are added that break down the starches in the oats. And then, you know, the excess oat shells are removed so that you get the oat base. And to that base, you add other nutritious ingredients, such as vitamins and calcium. And after that, you have something that actually I think many people will be familiar with. You also, for example, have to ultra heat treat those liquids or pasteurize it, you know, homogenize it. So that is something that people probably also know from dairy, from traditional dairy production. And finally, you have the packaging, of course, you know, you have to get it to the supermarket. So as you can see, some of these steps are not too different from cow's milk production processes, as cow's milk is also treated and packaged and so on. But we do have an unique and original way of making, you know, these delicious foods out of oats.
Ronnie is talking about leaving out the middle cow. Christie, your goal is to leave out the middle chicken.
The middle chicken, yeah.
The middle chicken. How you talked a little bit about the process and the processing plants. How did you find the materials? How did you pick them? And how is now the current development, given that you've achieved price competitiveness? So was this a search as well for new materials, or did you just turn regular crops into a completely Rebellyous product?
Yeah, so we definitely did the latter. Essentially, we used soy as our main protein source for our products. And there are a couple reasons for that. First of all, it's widely available. Second of all, it has a very high what's called PD-CAS score, which means that it meets the needs, nutritional requirements of humans very directly. Not that we don't know we can get protein from a lot of sources, but when it comes to serving a federal program like the USDA National School Lunch Program here in the United States, those public schools have nutritional requirements that require us to have very specific nutritional achievements with our products. So that's why we use soy. It's also widely available all over the world and has been used traditionally in plant-based meat for well over 100 years of commercial manufacturing and thousands of years for essentially traditional meat replacements going back to Indonesia and China, where we have used everything from soy to even soy meat replacements as far back as at least 1,000 years. So this is not a new protein as that's part of the human diet, but the other reason that we use it is our goal is to make the product that is most widely available to essentially replace. And actually, a lot of chicken products are mixed with soy products, so it's also not really a novel protein when it comes to, say, a child that is eating chicken nuggets at school. She's already eating chicken nuggets with soy in it. Having it all soy isn't much of a change for her. And that's really what we want. But in terms of like the innovation that we brought to the table was to develop a new process for making those products. So almost all plant-based meat, with the exception of some high moisture extruded products and other mushroom or mycelium products, are almost all made what's called mix and form production. Hydrate the texturized protein, emulsify the oil, water, and starch, mix them together into some sort of cohesive dough, and then form that dough into chicken nuggets, tenders, and patties. It turns out that dough making process is very laborious and it goes wrong a lot. And it can go wrong really easily. It requires a lot of labor. It requires a lot of extra steps, everything from the hydration to the emulsifying. And so what we did is we simply went back to first principles and said, what if we automated this? Like, it's a batch process. It's costing us a lot of time, money, energy, cleaning time, and things like that. If this was a continuous production, then then we could actually lower the cost, reduce the labor, and increase the quality so that all of it is automated and you're not depending on tired production workers who, have been working for 12 hours and may not remember the recipe at the end of the day. So that's really, really important that we figured out a way to automate. And that's exactly what they did in the chicken industry. The reason that we make batch processing of plant-based meat is because we make batch processing of animals, because animals are discrete individuals and we had to process them in big bowls and things like that because they are already, complete proteins, fats, starches, things like that. And so as a result, we just mimicked that when we started making plant-based meat. So our company came along to try to not mimic that, to go from first principles and fundamentally develop new technology, patentable, globally patented technology that converts all of that process for plant-based meat into a continuous process. In fact, plant-based meat production is much more like baking. So we really developed a system that was a lot more like baking than it was meat processing, which is where it's traditionally been done, is in meat processing facilities.
So Rebellyous Foods shows soy as the main ingredient, and Iga, you shows beans, more concretely, Polish beans. How is that different? Why did you choose Polish beans? Is it because of the fact that in Europe we produce a lot less soy? Was it more widely available? What were the reasons? And how did your technology develop to achieve the final end product?
Mm-hmm. I actually went through a very similar, like a series of different processes that Christie just described, but we were working with kind of a different kind of flour, I would say. Working with forming something, especially when you want to structurize the protein, and you don't have to, but you want to add something innovative, that kind of gives you a wide area of, looking for something, but also gives you like simple rules that you have to follow, and you have to just go one by one, and then just tests and tests and tests and tests. So I focused on beans, as you mentioned, because they are easily available in this part of the world. I think protein has like a huge share of the market, and I personally very like soy protein products. But I wanted something different. Like the first thought I had was as easy as this. I want to do something different than what's available already. So I started building kind of, you're doing the same thing, but in a new way, because you build your own system when you're working kind of inside the process with the protein, as Christie described. This is kind of like the first step. And then you do pretty much the same thing, like, good old business. You have to scale up, you have to automatize, you have to push up sales, you have to find new customers, you have to find new markets, you have to convince people, you have to accustom them to it. So I always compare myself to meat producers when I'm looking directly at the meat production. So we do the same thing. I just had to kind of design a different system of producing, but when you already have the goods you're making, you just have to conquer the world, and then the strategic thinking comes in, and the imagination and vision and mission. And then we all try to do the same thing, I guess, especially here, how we are gathered. And it's super inspiring to actually see that we have the same vision. Maybe not the same, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend anyone, but we have a similar ideas, and we strongly fight for them. And it's so reassuring that I can actually see Christie, who's like, I don't know, 2 years ahead of me, and is doing a great job. And I had some big fails and I had some few successes. So, all the roads are different, and they are very difficult because you do build something completely new and then try to break into an old system that is well established. And, the strength of power is set. And you're just like crashing into it and trying to do your best. Yeah.
Yeah, so something that we usually talk about here in Brussels and that we advocate for is the need to increase bean production in Europe, beans specifically, and other leguminous crops. How could that increase affect your business and production process? Have you reached a plateau? Is it hard to find European beans, or as of now, for the amount that you produce, the supply chain is still relatively stable?
We don't have those big issues yet, but we of course plan to. So we see it as we would like to probably work with farmers and have our own fields of beans that we could actually affect somehow in a way, kind of manage. But I think diversity, but also biodiversity is like the basic thing. So when there's too many beans, then probably someone or we will come up with something based on a different source. So then you have to look back at the production of kind of the materials you use, and then you have to balance it with your own moral rules and ethical feeling, whether you want to add something to this or whether this is something that maybe if it was a bit limited or wasn't speeding so much, would be more responsible, like as people who live on planet.
Speaking about EU regulations and discussion, we have here a question from the audience to the whole panel. So I'll let you just pop up and answer as you like. How do you think about the huge misinformation on plant-based products? And if I may add, over the last years, we've seen a lot of attacks on the naming and denominations of plant-based products under the pretext of consumer confusion. This is one of the misinformation causes here. So how do you see this discussion? How do you try to inform your consumers? But also, how do current regulations or perhaps future regulations on this field can affect your businesses? I would like to hear from all of you. Just pop up and you can start.
Well, I can jump in if that's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so we see a lot of this in the United States with legislation attempting to attack the use of the word milk, and which is ironic because we have milk coming from coconut milk to all sorts of things. And then, of course, there have been relatively few attempts, but a few that would basically attempt to kind of limit the words about meat. And a lot of those are mostly directed at cultivated meat, not so much plant-based meat. But what I usually tell both lobbyists and government officials and others, obviously we are against these kinds of things, the way that we name food products, both in the United States and globally. Obviously, it's regional to the country where the laws are applied, may or may not have any real effect on people's actual choices. But we don't want to be confused with meat. And we don't believe that people are confused, especially with precursors like plant-based or nuggets or tenders or patties. These are usually things that could mean black bean patties or they could mean beef patties. And we usually put a precursor on them. So this argument that somehow that we are being deceptive or somehow trying to prevent this kind of regulation as a result of trying to confuse consumers, the answer is we absolutely don't want to be confused with meat because it's made out of dead animals. So that's usually what I tell them.
That's a very good argument. Does anyone else want to answer?
Yeah, maybe I can add to that because Christie was speaking from the US experience, but we do also see these kind of attacks in Europe on dairy denomination as well. And, you know, as consumers are increasingly turning towards plant-based foods out of health, environment, ethical concerns, it's essential to enable them to make informed choices on what they're buying. And they need to readily find plant-based alternatives, plant-based products in the store and integrate them in their eating habits. And I do think that the average consumer, you know, should be able to understand the available options there are with clear, simple, user-friendly information, and be able to use words and descriptors and denominations that provide this clear reference framework. And this is not possible, and this is getting much harder if, you know, the restrictions are ever increasing for plant-based alternatives and plant-based foods. So it actually is making it harder for consumers to make informed choices. So and you said, Rafael, that, you know, it is about consumer confusion and all of that, but these kind of attacks are doing the opposite in our view. You know, when it comes to consumer confusion, they are in fact increasing opacity and confusion. And actually, an example, the last time there was a big political push for more restrictions on plant-based labeling in the EU, Oatly launched a campaign in which we could show that consumers are in fact not, you know, confused and not stupid. And so yeah, we were able to show that, and we supported a petition as well on this issue that in the end got almost 500,000 signatures actually. So yeah, this is also, it is going on here, and I think that it is making things harder, unfortunately.
Yeah, Andy, from the plant-based meat perspective, there have also been some attempts here in Europe to restrict denominations. How would that affect your business, and what do you respond to those to that misinformation?
So I wanted also to adapt to Ronja, like, really, customers are not stupid. They know what the package says and are able to read. I think like a lot of people can read and see that it's plant-based and it's not meat. So I'm not worrying about it. But we as Planeat always said on the front side it's plant-based. We don't want to hide it. But in some cases, we use like, you know, like we don't say the meatballs, but balls, like plant-based balls, and it's kind of a form that it's we have like cutlet. It's cutlets is not only from cows or pork. There can be also like bean cutlets. So we want to be fair to the customers, of course, to the consumers, but we don't want them to mislead, to be fair for everyone, and this is also our goal for the whole segment.
And Iga, being a neurocognitive scientist, how do you see this consumer perception on denominations, and also where do you think these ideas of restricting the denominations come from?
Mm-hmm. To be honest, I will be quite straightforward. I think it's a nonsense that plant-based market wants to kind of trick someone into something, or that maybe if we were cheating. I think this is a clash of lobbies, and our lobby is not too strong yet. So, because we want to be in the places where you can find normal animal-derived meat. But I think we are trying to start a clean fight, and someone is accusing us of doing the opposite. So, for example, that's why I'm super proud to be one of the founders of first union in Poland of plant-based producers. So we can actually start being seen as a small branch that's growing, but I would never want to trick anyone who wants to buy a chicken pesto sandwich to buy my product instead. I want to be in the same spot where a chicken pesto sandwich is, for example, in a huge coffee chain. But the consumer, like, this is the basic thing. They have to see like a huge sign, this is plant-based chicken, not chicken.
Yeah, because that's also like Christie said, that you really want to make clear what you are selling, because that is your target audience, people who are looking for an alternative.
Yeah, I think right now we are in the nice phase of trying to attract maybe not only plant-based, but mainly plant-based consumers to see something new, something different, what they are looking for. But on the other hand, we are going, like, it's shifting. We're going towards getting into the spot where you can find normally meat. And I strongly believe this is the way we should go. And it's not tricking the consumer to buy the sandwich. It's like a difficult fight to actually be in one of the biggest coffee chains in the world. And then, for example, even today, I wanted to try a new sandwich in one of the coffee chains. And I went there around noon, and they said it's sold out. And I asked them whether it's sold out every day by this time, and they said yes. So, like, the next thing is the chain will order a bit more, so they have a few more sandwiches per day, like a few more of them per day. And I believe in this kind of positive change, derived of giving people options, but you do the work for them. Like, you do the math, you know the statistics, you know what's the difference between plant-based production and meat production. You have done the research on what kind of protein, depending where you are, or what kind of production you want to settle. I forgot what was the question. I'm sorry, but yeah, it's nonsense that we try to mislead anyone.
I think you answered pretty well, and I think we came here to a conclusion that all that the plant-based industry is looking for is a level playing field, to be on the same spot in the supermarket. And talking about level playing field, something that both Green Rev and the EVU have advocated for many years is mobilizing European funds and public funds to finance research and development projects in the plant-based substitutes arena. To what extent, and maybe you can start here with Ronja, to what extent do you think the lack of such public funds is a barrier to the development of your companies, your technologies and machinery? And how could we create this level playing field?
So, research, development, innovation is really key for Oatly. We want to keep on innovating, and it's really part of our DNA. And of course, this is resource intensive, and no doubt it would certainly benefit from public funds, in the whole plant-based food market, I think. However, for us, it is also clear that we cannot wait, because, you work there too. In politics, things unfortunately move quite slow sometimes. And so we use our own funds and put our own funds towards continuous research and product and process development, to ensure that the oat drinks and oat products continue to be the world's best and continue to be great alternatives and products. So yeah, this is how we have been dealing with that issue.
And what about help to produce your crops and increase the sustainability of your supply chain? For example, given that in Europe, one big issue is a common agricultural policy, the third of the European Union budget, and it supports a lot of farmers. Does that include some oat farmers, or would we need to further the support for these plant-based crops?
Yeah, it's great that you talk about the farmers, because for us it is also clear that, you know, without farmers we wouldn't have our nutritious and delicious products and oats. You know, farmers are absolutely essential. Without farmers, Oatly as it is today, of course, would simply not be possible. And so and I also think that, because before I've been talking about consumers, you know, wanting to choose healthier and more sustainable options, but farmers, of course, as well, have an interest in maintaining the environment, maintaining a good climate, so that they can continue to tend to the land and grow and harvest these essential and quality foods that we have here in Europe. So we absolutely need to make sure that politics and companies and retailers work together with the farmers, enable the farmers to make the right decisions for themselves, but also for the environment. And yeah, so it would be great, you know, if there was more political recognition for this as well. But we also actually have started an initiative called Farmers Seeking Farmers, as an invitation to farmers to participate in developing sustainable agriculture solutions. And that was within the framework of an EU-funded research project, actually. And one of the flagship farmers of this project, maybe you've heard of him as well, is a Swedish farmer called Adam, who we have been working together with, and we call him a planetary caretaker. And on his farm, the main idea was to increase the proportion of vegetable crops for human consumption. And so Adam started using his land in a slightly different way. So one section grows peas and legumes and other vegetables. And the oats that had previously gone into the animals as animal feed, actually, now go into making oat drink instead. And that went pretty well. So he doubled the amount of food and calories coming out of his farm and reduced the carbon footprint by half at the same time. And he also, you know, was able to maintain biodiversity and keep the landscapes open. So yeah, this is such a great example, I think, because you can see really the potential in plant-based production for the farmers as well. So you have a win-win situation, you know, we just need that recognition, and we definitely need more support for that.
Yeah, we'll get a little bit more into the farmers discussion on the next question. But Andy, how does the EU's farming subsidies and research subsidies affect the development of your products in a competitive market with the alternatives that you're trying to replace, but also with your competitors, your direct competitors of plant-based meat producers?
Mm-hmm. So we see it that way, that when we compare plant-based meat alternatives producers to like regular meat producers, it's just not fair that we don't have anything, like nothing, and we have to make the sacrifice to battle on the shelf, and also with the price point, because the meat is cheap because the government gives money to keep it cheap. We don't have the luxury to have it. So we have to make our own sacrifices to have the price point as low as it can be. But for now, most of plant-based meat alternatives are just more expensive than the meat. So I think when it will change from the government, from EU standpoint, that we as producers of plant-based meat and fish alternatives, something like this, it could be more fair for the consumers also, that they can choose what they want to eat, not only seeing the price but also what kind of protein that I want to have. Is animal protein or maybe soy, maybe wheat. So they can choose. But now in this kind of when we had in Poland we had our big inflation, the price was everything. So it's quite how can I say it? Not easy, like if I can say it this way, for us. But maybe in the future it will change.
Yeah, I will go to Christie last for an US perspective, but first, Iga, how do public subsidies and public funds affect your business? Were you able to access them for the development of your products, or are you at a continuous disadvantage with meat producers?
I actually chose not to use public funds when building during the first stages of building the business. I see that there's a certain amount of money that's available, and it's going to go into promoting sustainable or responsible food products. And we just need to kind of, shift it towards our side. But that's a thing to build. I wouldn't say it's a bad thing we don't get it, because, and we have different arguments, but we have to fight for it, like build it, because no one would think to actually give any money to promote plant-based meat like a few years ago. So you have to actually educate. You have to lobby on a political stage, on an economic stage. Yeah, I think this might be the point. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we advocate here on an EU level. But I would like to hear Christie on this comparison with the US market from your perspective. And since you achieved price parity, do you think you have a level playing field, or are your competitors being heavily subsidized against you?
Yeah, so there's a long history, obviously, of the United States subsidizing chicken production as well as meat production overall, and dairy and eggs and everything else like that. That comes from a wide variety of sources within our federal government, including insurance programs, crop loss programs, and even the National School Lunch Program that subsidizes the cost of bringing meat to our public schools. And that, of course, is where we come in. Rebellyous Foods comes in. We produce a product that the chicken nuggets, tenders, and patties that qualifies for federal fund reimbursement for the public schools for any child that is living below the poverty level. And so in order for our products to qualify for that, we obviously have to meet the requirements of that program. We have to make it out of soy. We have to make sure all of our crops are grown in the US. And as a result, our school food customers will be able to get reimbursed for that through the National School Lunch Program. So that's one way we are already interfacing with public funding for plant-based meat. But you just got to play by the rules. There's a lot of rules, but after you get used to it for a while, it's not that bad. The other way that I think plant-based meat companies and other types of plant-based food companies can really work with the federal government is there are agricultural grants out there. They're kind of few and far between, and they're often extremely difficult to apply for. These are things like decarbonization grants, food processing grants. A lot of them, for the most part, go to meat processors. Where and when we can apply for such things, we do. To be honest, we've had only one small grant. I think it was maybe $5,000 or something like that, just to support essentially manual writing for one of our processes. But we got it, right? Like we participated in the system and got, in this case, it was federal money that was transferred to the state, and the state funded us here in Washington state in the United States. So those types of engaging in the larger food industry grant programs at the federal level or even at the state level can influence the plant-based industry as it has ours. But where there's a big gap is research and development funds that go towards plant-based meat, and specifically plant-based meat food safety. This is an area where we know a lot about how animal meat is dangerous to eat. It has to be cooked really well, etc. How to process it. We have not done even a drop in the bucket of research of how to do plant-based meat safely. And as a result, we applied the same rules for animal meat as we do for plant-based meat, and it doesn't always work. I strongly believe that, most, if not all, plant-based meat you eat is probably going to be safe, but we are not getting anywhere near, and certainly not even a drop in the bucket of the level of federal support needed to really research food safety for plant-based meat production.
Yeah, that's certainly something that we need to look more into. As a fact, in the EU, about 80% of the common agricultural budget is spent on meat production and feed for meat production. So it's quite high compared to plant-based alternatives. And sticking with the EU talk, something that has made headlines in the last week is the so-called Draghi report. The report was published with a very high impact on the EU sphere. And the Draghi report analyzes the competitiveness of Europe with other geographies like the US or China, looking to improve our research, innovation, and our industry. So I would now maybe starting with Andy, ask you, how can the plant-based sector contribute to the European competitiveness? And how do you see our market compared to the rest of the world?
Mm-hmm. So I see it that way when the new generation, like the Gen Z, comes to the market, they are more aware of what they eat. So we see now that the consumer behaves changes through time, and we just have to be a little more patient, I think, in terms of few years that the meat consumption will go down and plant-based meat consumption will go up. And in the terms of being more, in the terms of like the whole world, I think it will be a good impact because we, like the European Union, we like to be green, and plant-based meats and fish are basically green. So I think it's only a matter of time, but we can push even further.
And Ronja, how is Oatly doing, since it's a global company, how is it doing with production and competitiveness in different markets, in different geographies? And how could Oatly and companies like Oatly and producing plant-based alternatives affect the European economy and job creation?
So I cannot speak so much on the global perspective, as I'm really focused on the markets here in the EU, on some of the markets here in the EU. I think for competitiveness, it's really key that we have diversification, basically. So nutrition, diets, farming, sustainability, those are all very complex issues that cannot be isolated from another. So, there always has to be an integrated approach. And I think, that is then also dependent on politics to have that integrated thinking. But what I mean with diversification, what is certain is that a variety of food sources is good for health as well as farming. So I think, having that mindset, staying open to the development of these new sectors, of these new alternatives and products and so on, is the important thing here, so that we gain competitiveness through diversification. And we have to see, and remember, the global dairy retail market is worth $631 billion. And plant-based options currently represent a share of only 4% of that market. So, there's a huge opportunity, and there's so much work to be done. But of course, that's a huge opportunity for competition, for labor politics, the work environment, and the economy in general. So we're really, really at the start. But looking at the climate crisis and everything, that is going on, we really need to get a move on now.
And we really need to get a move on also to ensure a just transition for everyone involved and ensure new jobs for new green jobs for the new generations. Iga, is the EU missing out compared to other geographic blocks? Could Poland become a powerhouse of plant-based chicken in the world?
Let's hope so. That's the plan. But in what way do you mean, do we miss out compared geographically?
Do you feel like other geographies such as China or the US are giving more support and investment to the plant-based alternatives?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so every market is different. That depends which topic we touch. For example, working with feeding the public system, hospitals, schools. This topic came up, and it's super interesting how different it is in Europe and in the US. I don't know the specifics about how it is in the US, but in Europe, the system is more social, less private. So it's very difficult to clash again with a different system. For example, how to feed hospitals in Poland. It's like you fight with the National Health Service system and their budgets, and they don't have enough money for anything. The same comes to public schools, for example. So that depends which way we look. There are always opportunities, and there are also always challenges. So I think Europe is quite a comfortable place to be, I would say. It's difficult because it's so, differentiating among different countries. We have everything accumulated. So, you have to look differently at specific countries, but we don't work yet on an international level. We plan to. So I'm looking into it, and I do have some markets I'd like to approach as the first one, but it's always changing because always something comes up and changes your plans.
Yeah, of course. Christie, do you feel like the US, give us an outside perspective, is the US ahead of Europe or not really?
I don't think so. I don't think we're ahead of Europe. I think Europe has always been a leader in plant-based foods and plant-based meat replacement specifically, and an understanding for a very long time that meat replacement was important. Even before that, the long history of plant-based meat even goes back to Indonesia and China, and I think they also have a lot of progress in that regard as well. But in terms of like competitiveness, obviously we've seen a surge in the United States that has gone worldwide with success stories like Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods. And that's really exciting. That just shows that there's absolutely demand, that people are willing to replace their meat with an alternative, even if it's not every single day, even if it's not every meal. But they are very, very price sensitive, so that those markets can quickly evaporate when consumers have to make the choice between feeding all of the kids plant-based versus just feeding all of the kids. And I think that, that's why price parity and automation to get to price parity is so very important for our entire industry. And so we're always, at Rebellyous, we're always open to working with other companies to see how we can use our technology to make an even wider impact with other products, because we know that the entire market really could grow. I also just want to say, in terms of competitiveness, there's a lot of estimates out there about what is the potential size of the plant-based meat industry versus the animal meat industry. And there was really only one really good research done back in 2022, and it was obviously US based. Unfortunately, it was only retail based, that showed that they believe that 20% of the US meat market could easily be replaced if you could hit consistently price parity. So quality parity obviously has to be there, but it doesn't always have to be. Meat isn't that great all the time either. And so I think consumers really do put a, forgive the pun, high premium on price parity, because it really is their enabler and their choice maker when it comes to making it. So I would just say, when you think about that market, it's actually a different set of people. I just also want to say, like, people who would buy premium plant-based meat, like what's now being sold as Beyond and Impossible, versus who would buy Rebellyous, which is really only available in institutional food service. Those are a whole different category of people. They're making decisions based on different things, and obviously one of them being price, but it may be an underrepresented and even not represented in market estimates.
Yeah, and we're running out of time here. We're in our last 10 minutes, so I'd like to focus on the polarization between the plant-based producers and farmers, if there is such a thing. And Ronnie already developed a little bit, so I'm going to ask you all to be quite quick with your answer. But how do you see this polarization? How do we make peace with farmers, Ronja?
Yeah, as I said, by acknowledging the work that they do and the essential part that they play in all of this, because they tend to the land, and they provide the agricultural raw materials. So they are essential, and we need to work together, all of us. And yeah, I think we can do that. We have started with our initiative, and we would like to see more farmers joining in. So yeah, if there are any watching, please get in touch.
That is great. Iga, you produce mainly from beans. Beans are a traditional farmer's product. So do you have the farmers on your side? Would you like to have more farmers on your side? How is that relationship?
Oh, we always want to have more farmers on our side. I really liked when Ronja emphasized the perspective of the farmer when you look at the business or simply numbers. And we are just customers, kind of. We need them, and we will need them as much as we do already. So I don't think that's going to change. It's not that we have issues with farmers. I'd say there's a nice synergy between us, but we might have some issues with animal farming, but that, I think that's a different topic. But farmers, no, they're one of us, I guess. Kind of, to simplify it very, but I don't think there is a field for, misunderstanding.
Yeah, it is quite important to distinguish between animal farmers and farmers in general producing also plant-based products. Andy, how do you see this polarization?
So I think that we love all farmers. Farmers make plants, we make stuff out of those plants. So I think in the long term, farmers are like every other business. They need and have to adapt to new changes, to the new world that we are creating here. So I think we will be still close cooperating with all the farmers.
And now, Christie, is this polarization also a topic in the US?
I think it can be in certain segments, but our philosophy at Rebellyous Foods is to, in two ways, is to address a path to our collective change, essentially to enable both farmers and meat processors to be a collective agents of their own change. For example, I really highly admire the work of Mercy for Animals and their transformation program, where they're essentially supporting farmers to convert their chicken raising facilities into like mushroom factory and mushroom growing operations and places like that. That's a really good path to the future that is defined by our community, but shared with the animal process, our animal raising community. Same thing we're doing at Rebellyous Foods. By developing our new technology, we can convert meat processing facilities into plant-based meat production facilities and therefore be partners in this future of plant-based meat rather than adversaries.
That sounds like the way to go to ensure a just transition for everyone. We have our last 5 minutes, so I will take a question from the public, and I would ask you to be very quick in your answers with about 30 seconds. And the question is on science communication. Do you think that studies, research, science can help to show that vegan products are much more sustainable, healthier, and climate friendly? And how do you try to communicate this science, if you do, to your consumers? Maybe start with Ronja.
Great question. Thank you so much. Yeah, we have actually commissioned life cycle assessments, so-called LCAs of our products. So that is basically a measurement of the climate impact from grower to grocer. Yeah, so from growing the oats over the processing, including transport, until they are on the shelf. And we could show, for example, an Oatly barista in Poland has a 67% lower climate impact than comparable cow's milk. And this is what we put on our packaging. And if you want to get more information on that, we have lots more information on our website. I really encourage you to dig into that. It's super interesting how that is done.
Thank you. Andy?
Yeah, sure. So I think that we have to measure everything that we can in the whole process of producing and to making a whole product. And it's really important to make the wise choose when we in the supermarket. So I think it's really important for everyone.
Thank you. Iga, how do you try to communicate science to your consumers?
It's a difficult question. I think science is like the basic of everything, but I'm a scientist, so maybe that's why. Science allows you to understand different processes. So whether we look at production, whether we look at consumer behavior, whether we look at numbers of, comparing plant-based production to animal production, it's all science. But science doesn't draw as much money as business, and it's not as exciting, I would say. So we need to fight for it. We need to push it forward. Yeah.
And so would you say that science is not sufficient, or is not one of the best arguments to convince consumers to opt for these products?
I think it's necessary. Yeah, it is. It's a base. It's like the base of what we have to do. We need the science. We need to educate people. We need to give them the facts, give them the information. And I also believe in like joining forces. So without science, we won't go anywhere. Without financing, without business, without activism, without so many things, it's not gonna work. So science is like one of the pillars. That's how you say, yeah.
Pillars, yeah. So it's one of the ground pillars of the vegan revolution, as someone is calling here in the comments as well. Christie, to finish the debate, how do you try to communicate science, and is that a worry of the consumers in the US?
It is a worry of consumers in the US, and at Rebellyous Foods, we don't communicate the science. It is not our job to necessarily change people's minds about meat. I personally am a vegan, but I do believe that I need to meet the needs of my consumers to make plant-based meat available and affordable for everyone through price parity and quality parity with meat. There is plenty of information out there from NGOs and many other studies showing that plant-based is more environmentally friendly, healthier, etc. Success takes focus. So at Rebellyous Foods, we are hyper-focused on price parity and volume and getting that out to as many people as possible. We don't need to be their teachers. They know what they need. Our goal is to meet it.
Very well. I'd like to thank you, everyone, for this very interesting conversation and also for the work that you do. You really are leading a revolution, a global revolution towards more sustainable food systems, healthier people, a healthier planet, and better animal welfare. I'd like to thank once again the partner of this session, the Vegetarian Society of Denmark, and thank Green Rep for the invitation to host this incredible panel. Thank you to everyone at home watching. I hope this was a very interesting conversation. And obviously, you can reach out to us in multiple ways through our website, through our LinkedIn, if you have any more questions. Thank you all, and enjoy the last session of the night.